I want you to start by telling me a little bit about Kitchen Hill. So summarize Kitchen Hill for me.
Sure.
What is Kitchen Hill?
That's a long story, but I'll try and summarize it, Dion. And thanks for having me. Kitchen Hill is really a different type of resort. What I sought to do in Kitchen Hill was to develop a model for using hotel resorts as a change agent in our society. I'm not a hotelier. I didn't approach it from the hotel perspective. What I was interested in is, since the Caribbean hotel industry is such a part of the Caribbean economy, but when I examined the models, I found that the models were very outdated. Many of the hotels that operated belonged in the previous century almost. And so I felt that we needed to have a model that really embraced things that are important to us as people, things that could have a positive impact on our society, and things that would overall set out a model that sought to change the hotel industry. So that's where it came from. It came from that space as an agent for change. And then we started to develop the hotel. And what we have now is a 400-acre resort with an 18-hole golf course, our first hotel, which is 84 rooms. And the whole thing is founded on the principles of sustainability. So that, in a nutshell, is what we have.
Why St. Kitts?
St. Kitts was actually at the right place at the right time, because when I came up with this idea, I looked actually at Grenada and Dominica and St. Kitts. St. Kitts at the time was just coming out of sugarcane. I was looking for an island that was not well developed in tourism, but that was coming into the tourism industry, and therefore the model hopefully would have some impact on the broader economy and the society as a whole.
Okay, so you're Trinidadian. How, when the idea was conceptualized, you said St. Kitts was in the right place at the right time, but why did you look outside as opposed to looking at Tobago?
Right. Well, first of all, I was doing work all through the islands, and I developed the National Stadium for the government of St. Kitts. So I was there and present in St. Kitts at the time. But more importantly, the OECS islands are much more dependent, their entire economy is dependent on tourism. So I felt that within the OECS, there'd be one, more receptivity, and two, it would have more impact. The model would have more impact.
Okay, and how long have you been in the industry?
I'm not a hotelier, so my background, actually I own Undercover, you may know the plant place in Santa Cruz, which I owned up to recently. So that was my first business. Most of my businesses are focused on sustainability in the broadest possible way. And so I was involved in multiple businesses across many different platforms, and all of them had a common theme of seeking at least to engage in some part of our society in a sustainable, positive future.
Okay, you willing to delve a little deeper into your background?
Sure.
Okay.
Coming out of Undercover, I got heavily involved in also large-scale landscape design and construction, and founded a company called Terraforma Landscape Design and Construction, which went on to do larger projects across the whole region, including in Trinidad, and got involved in a wide range of large landscape projects in, say, West Moorings and that area around Port of Spain, as well as stadia work. So we did a lot of stadia work. That led to a development company which got involved in developments around the region. And also peripherally, I got involved in Gael. I was one of the co-founders of Gael, a television station. I was the chairman of the Caribbean Contemporary Art Association for a couple of years. So I was involved in a wide range of different types of activities, all linked back to my own philosophy, which is that art and culture play a pivotal role in sustainable development.
With that in mind, do you think that our government here in Trinidad and Tobago seems to work under that premise? Do you think we do enough to push arts and culture? I think that
an investment in art and culture is a very long-term affair. I really believe that for society to develop sustainably and develop a sustainable future for itself, it needs to understand better who it is as a society. We're a very young society in Trinidad. We have a long way to go before we have a deeper sense, a clear sense of who we are and where we're going as a people. I think that unfortunately our political models drive governments to make fairly short-term 5-year cycle decisions. And so as such, I would love to see governments in the region spend more time and more effort in longer-term planning, not only in the arts, but in other areas of our economy as well.
It's a long-term process, yes, but do you think we are heading in the right direction in that regard?
I think that we need to focus a little bit more on who we are as people. And to do that, we need to embrace our arts more. I think art and culture is treated as peripheral, and our economy, particularly in Trinidad, is all around, oil and gas and heavy industries. But that really doesn't lead us to, it takes us somewhere, but where? The question is, where are we going as a people? Where are we going as a society? And to me, that's the deeper question that we should ask ourselves. What does the future look like in 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now? What society will our children inherit? And what impact, and if any, how can we protect our own culture, things that are unique to us and to the Trinidad and Tobago society, from the international globalization that's taking place?
You may know that our government is currently in talks to have a Sanders resort built in Tobago. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I wouldn't criticize fellow hoteliers. So in many ways, I think it's a good thing for Tobago, because I know that Tobago has been struggling with its hotel industry plant. Personally, I prefer not the all-inclusive model. I feel that the all-inclusive model seeks to create small islands of resort communities that are not connected with the broader community and society. What I encourage is a deep connection with the community and the society as a whole. And so the all-inclusive model tends to, and hopefully one can mitigate this, but tends to keep people within their boundaries, within their walls, and not give a broader experience of the place that the person has visited. So many times you find a guest visiting an all-inclusive tends not to engage with the communities, not to participate in the economies of those communities, but rather just they paid their money into the resort, they stay there, they eat, they drink there, and they make a small foray out from time to time. But I've met people who've gone to all-inclusive so don't even know which island, they can't remember which island they've been to, because there's been no significant impact about the island, about the place. It's just been, well, I went to a nice hotel and it was fun, and we ate a lot and we drank a lot.
Okay. If you were in a position to make decisions with regards to our tourism industry, what would you do?
I would recommend that we really seek to showcase and bring forward our strengths, which is in Trinidad, art and culture is massive, and I don't think we've actually explored that in the level of detail that we can. And I think in Tobago they have both a combination of wonderful history, art and culture, and natural, more kind of classic Caribbean geography and topography, which they could also showcase. But I recommend high value, low volume tourism, as against, particularly for Tobago, as against high volume, low value tourists. And I would like to encourage a type of tourist plant and product that encourages an experiential traveler rather than what we call the fly and flop guests, a guest that just wants to come and lie on the beach all day, because Trinidad and Tobago have very unique attributes, and I think the world hasn't really fully understood that as yet.
What are some of the unique attributes that you...
I think they're different from both in Trinidad and Tobago. I think here in Trinidad we have not only the cultural aspects and all that wonderful calendar that we have of events that happen year-round, which can be brought forward and made in a way more accessible to tourists, and in a way that the tourist experience is easier. And at the same time, we have this wonderful flora and fauna here, which also I think we can do some more to explore. So I think there are people that are seeking that wildlife experience that we can give, because here it's very accessible, whereas if you go to South America, we have the same flora and fauna as South America, but it's much more accessible. In Tobago, as I said, I think Tobago has wonderful beaches, coves, wonderful people, wonderful history and culture, and I think that can be brought forward, because each island in the Caribbean has a very unique flair to it, and I think what we need to is bring that to the forefront and really bring that into a meaningful way, and not in a very cliche way, but in a meaningful way, so that the guests can experience something. There's a traveler out there now that's looking for meaningful, authentic experiences, and that the world is devoid of that, because what they've done is they've sanitized the tourism industry has sanitized itself and presents pretty much what people want, what they think people want to hear, rather than presenting who we really are.
Okay, so back to Kittition Hill. How do you St. Kitts Nevis is a tourism it's a tourism island, home to Four Seasons and all
Yes.
you have Marriott and stuff like that. How does Kittition Hill compete?
Right. We don't compete directly against the Four Seasons or the Marriott because what we're offering is a very different experience. First of all, we're not on the beach. We're on a hillside location. We start at 500 feet and go up to 1,000 feet. Kittition Hill is one large organic farm. We have one of the largest collections of tropical fruits and vegetables in the Caribbean, planted in the wonderful soils that we have there. And all our landscapes are what we call edible or useful plants. So that when you come to Kittition Hill, it's a very, very different experience than going to a kind of beachside type resort, which is what you would have in both Marriott and in Four Seasons.
Okay, so exactly what could somebody who comes to stay at Kittition Hill, what could they expect?
Okay, so our main focus is on both sustainable development and also sustainable thoughts for yourself. In other words, a guest coming there, we would like them to experience and to really experience what authentically St. Kitts is about. So it's about the people. It's about who we are as people. It's about our staff. It's about the farm that we have. It's about the food. In Kittition Hill, all the food that you eat, or almost all, I mean, more than 90% of it, ingredients are sourced from St. Kitts. In fact, most of them, a lot of them are sourced from our farm and the surrounding farms, but more than 90% of all the ingredients come from St. Kitts. So just you start off with our food and our staff. What you eat comes from the land and the sea. And that offers the guest a very different experience to going into a resort where they largely import most of the ingredients. In fact, unfortunately in St. Kitts, more than 90% of all the food consumed is imported. So we've completely turned that around. Our health and wellness program, you've been to Kittition Hill, you've seen that we have these beautiful fresh breezes, beautiful views out. Our architecture reflects those of the villages, of surrounding villages. It's not an imported architecture. Architecture was drawn from the vernacular style of the surrounding villages. And therefore there's a sense of calmness, a sense of well-being. We found guests would come there and immediately calm down, go and do many treatments that we have in our spas. Our spa treatments, some of them are sourced in the same way from local ingredients. So, and that's being developed even more. So we offer a very holistic experience for a guest who's looking for something very different. We do have a beach bar on the beach, and we offer a shuttle ride down to, it's about 10 minutes down. So we do have that beach experience for those who want that. But largely we find people stay on property, just calm down. We teach yoga and meditation and spa treatments and the food and hikes up to the crater, exploring the farm, learning about all the different things we've planted in the farm. And you'll be surprised at how many people come from North America or Europe and haven't even seen a banana tree growing bananas or a pineapple plant growing pineapples.
Wow.
So they come and they're like, oh, that's a pineapple. I didn't know that pineapples grew. I thought they grew on trees. So it's a wonderful experience for someone to fly in from New York and come and go and visit our farmers. They go and forage. They go and pick. It's amazing. You have people coming and spending $600 US dollars a night for a room, and they're going with the farmers to pick avocados and mangoes, and it's one of their best experiences. They love it. We have an experience where people go into the nursery and they have breakfast under a big old mango tree we have there, and they have breakfast with the staff from the nursery who talk about the history of the area. Many of them worked in the sugarcane industry before. They talk about their experiences in that, and the guests really enjoy that experience. It's very different there.
So far, would you say that a larger fraction of the guests who stayed are regional or international?
International guests. I mean, we do have a special package for CARICOM guests, but our packages are fairly expensive. Our guests tend to come from North America, largely from the New York tri-state area. We do have some coming also from the UK.
And what's the average age bracket?
We actually have two types of guests. We have one group that's in the late 40s to 50s, 60s, and then we have another group of people in their mid to early 30s. And that's interesting because it's following some of the demographics that are happening in those major markets, where we have the baby boomer generation who their children have grown up, and they're mainly couples that come to Kittition Hill, and then we have the millennials who are young, don't probably even have families yet, or may have very small children, and they come out and because they're looking for that experience. And we've found that from our research that the millennials are very interested in what we call experiential travel.
Okay, is your resort open to children as well?
Yes, we have villas that are very child friendly. The main hotel, Belmont Farm, the rooms can accommodate small children, but we don't really encourage it. It's mainly for couples.
Okay. Do you have any plans for any kind of development in that regard here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Not as yet, but I'm always open. I've had discussions some time ago with the THA, and you know, they're aware of some of the work that I'm doing in St. Kitts.
If you were to be approached by, let's say, our Minister of Tourism, to sit on the board with regards to the development or the proposed development of a Sandals in Tobago, is this something that you would support, or would you try to steer them in another direction?
That's a very loaded question, but I would always be happy to help in any government in the region with their strategic direction. I think there's a balance between what's commercially possible and what works and is sustainable. My focus is always on the longer term sustainable elements of things, even though sometimes there are short term difficulties involved in that. I still feel that they're worth the longer term picture. But I'm always been very open. In fact, Kittition Hill has welcomed many heads of governments from around the region, and we're always happy to share whatever our experiences, both good and bad, with whoever, because part of the mandate of Kittition Hill is to help inform and help operate as a model for future developments in the region.
And how old is Kittition Hill?
Kittition Hill is, we started building about in 2011, so it's just about 5 years old. We opened just about a year now.
Okay. How do you manage to find balance between your work and your personal life? I see that you're married.
Yes, I am.
Sure.
That's a very difficult one, because you know, when you love what you do the way I do, and you're passionate about your philosophy, as I am, work can be all-consuming. I live on Kittition Hill, and therefore it does kind of take a lot of my time. My wife also is a business person, and she's based in London, so we go backwards and forwards. So that gives us a bit of space in to look after our businesses, but at the same time, we don't see enough of each other. We would love to see some more.
Okay. So what do you enjoy most about what you do?
I believe that that Kittition Hill is about planting seeds. I feel very strongly that one of the approaches that we need to take in our society is recognize that we're a very young society, and that we have to undertake things that sometimes we will not see the end of within our lifetime. And some of the initiatives, some of them we haven't started as yet in Kittition Hill, are planting seeds for future generations. And that's something that has given me a great amount of joy, and it's something I really enjoy. I feel that we should build archives for future generations. Do what you're doing. Produce digital archives of some of the people, some of the older folk. One of the things I'd love to do is record some of the elders across the region and get their stories. Just record them for future generations. So part of our aspirations in Kittition Hill is to build a very substantial digital archive of both written work and video and music, so that we have that there so people can come to Kittition Hill, researchers and students can come there, make work there, and it sits there as a repository, an archive for future generations.
Okay. Here you are, a Trinidadian living and working in St. Kitts. Do you have a lot of Trinidadians working on the resort as well? Or?
We have several. Yes, we have probably 5 or 6 people from Trinidad who are there working. It's not my deliberate policy. It's just by by advertising and getting people to come there. St. Kitts is a very small island, and therefore there's a very limited amounts of people in any one area of some of the specialist disciplines. So we do have several Trinidadians working there. Yeah.
Okay, are these Trinidadians who are based in St. Kitts or Trinidadians
they're based in St. Kitts, yes.
Oh, okay. So they were there at the time, or
No,
they relocated?
They relocated. Some of them relocated because of us, and others were there before, and then we hired them on.
Okay, what do you like most about St. Kitts?
I think the people. I think the people are incredibly friendly. I mean, St. Kitts is what I imagine the Caribbean was when my parents grew up, and when they were talking about how wonderful Caribbean people were, and still are in many ways. But St. Kitts has that authentic kind of Caribbean vibe, which somehow, as islands develop, seems to get lost along the way, unfortunately.
Okay, what part of Trinidad are you from?
Well, Santa Cruz is really, I was born in St. James, but Santa Cruz is where I lived most of my life at undercover.
And what secondary school did you go to?
I went to Poly, actually. I didn't go to secondary school here, but I went to Polytechnic in St. James.
Okay, cool. And how long have you been operating out of Trinidad?
The past 5 years or so, but before that, about 10 years before that, I was working regionally. So for the past 15 years, I've been working throughout the region. And then over the past 5 years, I actually moved to St. Kitts.
Do you have a lot of return guests to Kittition Hill?
Well, we're just open, so we haven't really started that, built that kind of portfolio of guests, but we do have some, yes.
Okay, and for the short space of time that you have been open, what has been your busiest time?
Christmas, New Year's, that's the peak period for us, and traditionally in the Caribbean, that has been the peak period. And then it goes all the way through to Easter, and then it tends to drop off a little bit after that.
What's the name of the area where Kittition Hill is built again?
It's in the St. Paul's area. It's in the northwest of the island with views out to St. Bart's and St. Martin's, Station Sabre.
Okay, I want you to tell me a little bit again about the Kittition Hill philosophy.
Right.
I want you to, I looked at your videos,
Sure.
the videos that you have on YouTube. Do you have, a lot of times when you have like big developments like that happening in an area, in islands, especially Caribbean islands, you'd find that residents who live in the area, they tend to be opposed to the development. Is that something that you had to deal with?
Not at all, and it relates to our philosophy. So let me answer your question about the philosophy first, and we'll go back into that. Our philosophy that I've developed is built around 4 major pillars. We call them pillars. It's art and culture, the society, the economy, and the environment. Typically in sustainable development, they talk of the 3, and I've separated art and culture from society. One could argue they're intertwined because of the emphasis and focus I place on it. And what we do is we've built and developed a culture around those 4 pillars. So in other words, everything we do should relate to all of those elements, and some of them relate more to one than the other. So let me give you an example. For instance, when we were developing Kittition, when we were building it, the designs, I feel that if someone's coming to St. Kitts, they should stay in a room that represents and reflects the architecture of the place. It shouldn't feel like you've come from New York and you're going into a glass building, because, why would you leave New York then? So I challenged the architects, and we went through a few architects before we found our architect that works with us now, to take what you call the vernacular architectural style of St. Kitts and distill it into a 5-star hotel, which I think he did very successfully. So he took the elements of a chattel house, of the sugar factory, of Brimstone Hill, of different elements that exist around in the landscape of St. Kitts, and he translated them into a 5-star hotel experience. So that gives the place a grounding. The buildings are reflective of that you would see in a village, and therefore, from just a basic psychological perspective, a Kittition person going to Kittition Hill doesn't feel alien, because the architecture is no different from that you'd find in the surrounding villages and towns. But there's more than that. Because we built small, low-density buildings in Kittition Hill, we are able to use the very small contractors who normally build their homes in the villages to build Kittitian Hill. We believe this is the first time that a large-scale resort in the OECS has been built using small local contractors, lots of them from the surrounding communities. And because of that, all the money that we spent in Kittitian Hill in the construction went straight back into the communities. Most of the people around there were impacted positively in a way because they would have a family member who's worked in either construction or now in the hotel operations in Kittitian Hill. So that in itself has been meaningful in that, if you looked at, we've touched art and culture because architecture is art and culture, the society, the economy, because we put cash back. We pay every 2 weeks. We pay our contractors every 2 weeks because they're small contractors. They can't carry a month of business. And the environment, when we laid out Kittitian Hill, it was laid out in a very environmental way. We cut no trees down in the development. I know that's hard to believe because when you see it, it's all between the trees. But we've cut no trees down in the development. We've laid out, every building was laid out, individually. I personally laid out every building there. And we've, as you know, we've planted this incredible collection of rare fruit trees and vegetables in between all these buildings. We've preserved, we didn't make significant excavations or cuts in the land. It was all done very lightly on the land with a great degree of respect for the land itself. So, we take those 4 pillars and pretty much everything that we do is translated through that filter.
How did you go about the decor? While I was there, I saw you all have a lot of antique stuff. So like the phones,
right,
the old radios, some of the bathtubs. Where did you source those things?
From all over the world. Unfortunately, most of the antiques in the Caribbean have already been sold out of the Caribbean. So we relied on international sourcing from all over the world, primarily from the US and some other places, but those were purchased internationally and we had to bring them in. We got some of the, you may not have seen them because we just put them out, but we got some artifacts from the sugar industry actually on loan from the museum, and so those we're assembling now and being able to display those. So we have been able to work in some local antiques into the mix.
Okay. Is it that you have one interior designer or a group of designers that dealt with that aspect?
A single interior designer. In fact, the architect did the landscape architecture, the architecture, and the interior design. He does the whole package.
Wow. That's fantastic. So, you said that no trees, not one?
We cut a few trees down that were smaller than 6 inches, but we have not cut any trees larger than 6 inches in diameter to build those buildings. So the buildings are moved around. If there's a tree, we just move the buildings around until we can build them without. Sometimes it takes a long time.
Well, I can imagine.
There is, I should make one exception. There is one tree that's an invasive species that we do cut down, but it's an invasive species, so it shouldn't be there in the first place.
Okay, because I'm thinking there was one of the villas in particular that I saw. I can't remember the name of it, but when you're outside, there's a pool, and there's the bathtub that's facing. You can look down the hill, but it's just like trees and stuff like that. So you all actually built it within
we built them within the trees, and then some of them we've planted as well.
Wow. So you started to build the resort in 2011.
That's correct, yes.
And you opened the resort like a little over a year ago?
2014, yeah. Just end of 2014 is when we opened.
So you all were building constantly?
Yes. And building the way I just described, using the small contractors, is not easy. I mean, if we had a large international contractor, we probably would have finished faster. But then most of that money would have gone back out of the country. The contractors we worked, we had to hire a few Trinidadian project managers to help because they couldn't read, like some of them couldn't read the blueprints, the plans. So they had to help interpret those, help them with the finishes, help them learn how to, some of them we purchased additional tools for, and so on. So it's been a training process, but I believe that's the right way to develop. What's the sense of hurrying up to get a resort built? And if we've spent $150 million US to date in Kittitian Hill, so if that money was spent and went out of the country, how would that really benefit the development of St. Kitts?
Now that the resort is open, has it lived up to your vision?
It's a journey. We've opened the first phase. We continue to open that. In fact, that first phase will be fully open at the end of this year. and we continue to develop more phases of it. We have the next stage is the village, which I'm very excited about. Has it lived up to my expectations? It's been a bumpy ride. Doing a development of that scale and size with the machinations of the world economy is not easy. But I have to say it's been a very rewarding journey so far.
What, if anything, would you do differently?
I probably would not build a golf course first. I think that building the golf course first has set up some challenges. So that's the only thing different I would do, really. Other than that, I probably wouldn't do very much different.
And where do you see Kittish Hill in the next 5 to 10 years?
Hopefully, as a thriving, sustainable community that's focused on health and wellness and food, that serves food that is recognized internationally, as we've already started to get that recognition, and that it becomes a place for not every guest, but for people who are seeking an authentic Caribbean experience that doesn't impact negatively on the future of where they're from. I think that's what I'd like to see.
Is your chef a native Kitishan?
No, he's not.
Trinidadian?
He's French.
Okay.
But we are training several local sous chefs. But our level and style of food is very, very challenging. It requires a great degree of experience in it to learn. I mean, we serve what we call farm to table food, which is sourcing local ingredients and not letting the chef say, well, I want salmon, or I want this particular type of beef, or I want this particular type of tomato. What we get from the farms and the farmers and the fishermen and the butchers, that informs his menu. So the menu may change every day, just depends on what comes through the door.
Okay, what do you think are some of the ways we could go about encouraging more inter-island travel?
That remains one of our biggest issues, and quite frankly, it is something that my group has spent some time looking at, and remains still an enigma. I believe that there is no other way other than to seek to either work with LIAT or have a competitor of LIAT fly through the region. We've looked at high-speed water transport, but unfortunately the islands are too far away to really make that a really efficient way of travel. Unfortunately, the taxes, if you look at the breakdown of a ticket, the taxes between the islands, because it's a source of revenue for the governments, are very high. And I think that's one of the biggest impediments. I think we have to somehow address that in a structural way, because otherwise, sometimes the ticket costs are quite low, but the taxes add up to quite a lot.
Okay. Is there anything else about you'd like the Trinidad and Tobago public to know about Kittish Hill?
I'd love to invite everyone to come up. We have very special rates, particularly in this summer. We have some very special rates. I'd like people to come up and see what we're doing there, to experience Sin Kitts, because not many Trinidadians have been to Sin Kitts, as you probably know.
Yeah.
And so I'd like people to come up and see their little sister up at the top end of the Caribbean.
Okay, thanks so much for coming in,
Thanks, Dion.
Mr. Kempadoo, and thanks for answering my questions.
You're welcome.